believe in the ripple effect.
What's up? Finally, another episode of the Ripple Effect Podcast. Of course, I'm your host, Rica Brandes, also known as Ricky Brandes, and I got a great episode for you today. Sorry it took so long. I am still behind. I've been just so busy. It's been hard to find time to book guests, hard to find time to record guests, and even more difficult to do the editing, the intro, and all that stuff that's required prior to releasing the show. But I'm happy to finally have a couple episodes to release to you guys. This one's done, obviously, because you're listening to it, and I have a couple other ones that are recorded and hopefully ready to release very soon, so keep a lookout for those amazing conversations. And as always, thank you so much for sticking with the show. Even if I do go in a little bit of a hiatus, you guys stick with me. Once I release some shows, the download numbers increase drastically again, and I know that all my loyal listeners are back checking out the Ripple Effect Podcast, so I can't thank you guys enough for that. Life has just been a little extra crazy of late, and also financially I couldn't keep taking time out of my full-time job to book guests and record shows and all this other stuff. Unfortunately, some of the support has kind of disappeared for the Ripple Effect Podcast, and I hope that once I start releasing shows consistently again, some of that support will increase again. But the support has really gone down the last couple months, and Patreon supporters have gone down, merchandise sales have gone down, everything has gone down. So it just got really hard to justify taking time out of other things to do this. And that's why I'm going to tell you all the ways you can support the show and hopefully motivate you guys to help support the show, because this is a value for value show. And I know many of you guys are getting value out of these conversations and these podcasts. I get many messages on all the social media platforms I'm on with people just letting me know that they like a specific show or they just appreciate what I'm doing. So please, if you're one of those people who appreciate what I'm doing and can financially support the show, please do. And I'll tell you all the ways you can do so. We have a Patreon page if you want to support us monthly. And if you do, I do a Patreon podcast with my Patreon supporters roughly once a month. I get to connect with the listeners. They get to connect with myself. They get to be on an episode because I release it as a full episode. So it's a cool way of listening to yourself on iTunes and all that stuff, all the places you can find the Ripple Effect Podcast. We also have a Venmo if you want to support us that way. We have a crypto wallet if you want to support us via crypto. We do take Ethereum and Bitcoin. We also have a PayPal account if you want to send a one-time tip. And some of you guys have, and I really appreciate everybody who has. I know one recent listener said that they're sending me the balance on their PayPal because they're getting rid of it. I know a lot of people are getting sick of PayPal, but as long as they keep letting me use the platform, I'm going to keep using it. Patreon has had some issues in the past also, so I'm aware of these things, but as long as I'm still on there and not kicking me off, I'm going to use it to my benefit. And please, no donation is too little. And if you want to support us on Patreon, also the same philosophy is true. No donation is too little. If a small percentage of all the people who download the Ripple Effect Podcast donated as little as $1, I could easily do this full time. So that puts in perspective that if everybody contributes, if everybody helps, you can help with the goal of eventually doing the show full time. But we do have some sponsors too, if you want to support the show that way. One of them is Content Safe, which is the company that built my website and also sends all my video podcasts to all the video platforms I'm on. And you're going to learn a little bit more about that on this episode because I have the founders, creators, CEOs of the company Content Safe, Darrell and Matt Raymer, who you guys might know because he's been on a bunch of Union of the Unwanted episodes and has been a guest on this show a bunch of times. But please check out Content Safe. Let them know you're a Ripple Effect podcast listener, and they'll help you out. If you're a YouTuber, if you're a streamer, if you're whatever you may do, it might be a service that could benefit you. And you can upload to one platform and they'll send your videos to all the platforms that you have channels on. So it's a great service, saves you tons of time. Definitely check it out. And you can find links to Content Safe and all these links that I'm referring to in the show description or on my website, therippleeffectpodcast.com. So you can find all the ways of supporting the show there. We also have a merch store. If you want to get hoodies, t-shirts, mugs, whatever it may be, please check out the merch store. We have tons of stuff, hats, kids' clothes. Christmas is right around the corner. Maybe think about buying some Ripple Effect podcast merch as a Christmas present. We have tons of cool logos, so please check out the rippleeffectpodcast.com for that link, or you can go directly to the merch store by going to the Ripple Effect Podcast merch.com. And we also have a sponsor called the University of Reason and the very popular autonomy courses, which was created by Richard Grove, who is the host of the Grand Theft World podcast. He's been on my show a bunch too. You guys might know who he is. Definitely check out the University of Reason. If you're at a crossroads in life and you're looking to connect with a freedom-minded community, if you're looking to expand on some skills you have or learn some new skills, please check out the University of Reason. You can help yourself and the Ripple Effect podcast at the same time. And then we also have Element Electrolytes, which is one of my favorite sponsors. They are a electrolyte mix that you put in water. You can get your potassium, magnesium, and sodium without any sugar. There's no artificial anything in it. It's formulated by Rob Wolf, who is an OG in the paleo and keto community. He's been on my podcast. He's been on all the major podcasts that have health and nutrition people on. He's an author, documentary filmmaker, super intelligent guy. And if you're looking to get some flavor in your water and you don't want to drink something that's full of sugar or artificial flavors, please check out Element. Every time you use the link in the show description or on my website, you get a free gift with every purchase. So please check out Element. If you're an athlete, if you have muscle soreness, fatigue, headaches, any of these things that could be related to dehydration, definitely check out Element Electrolytes. Last but not least, check out my music called Theory 6, and also check out and listen to the Ripple Effect podcast on Rockfin, because you can support us there just by watching and listening to the show. It's a video platform. It's an awesome video platform because they don't censor anybody. They haven't kicked anybody off for having medical misinformation. So please check out Rockfin, and you can also tip content creators you like. So check out Rockfin. Check out all the links in the show description. Check out my website, rippleeffectpodcast.com. Check out my other show, The Union of the Unwanted. That's it. Enjoy this conversation. The next one's right around the corner, and I promise you that the next Ripple Effect podcast new episode won't take as long to release. So please keep a lookout for the Ripple Effect podcast on whatever audio platform you're listening to the Ripple Effect podcast, or whatever video platform you're watching the Ripple Effect podcast. Thanks, guys. Hope all is well. Hope you guys are enjoying the holidays. I know October has Halloween, then you have Thanksgiving and Christmas and all these reasons to gather with your friends and family and enjoy each other's company, which is what life's all about. So please keep doing that, because having the freedom to do those things and enjoy those things is some of the things that we're fighting for with this show. Thanks, guys, and I'll talk to you in the next one. Peace. The elevator pitch?
I'd love to get a crack at it.
Man. I'm usually the one who does this, so I want to hear your version.
All right. Content Safe is a video distribution platform with service. We get to get your videos up on multiple platforms and help you grow your audience on a lot of different places like Rumble and Odyssey and BitChute and Brighteon and all the many different growing number of platforms. So you grow an audience. So that's one thing. And the other part is to prevent censorship, since many people are experiencing their YouTube channels getting axed right away, or over time getting delisted and de-emphasized. And at the same time, we work for all content producers, especially we love the ones who are in alignment with freedom and and choice, and certainly very pro speech. This is all about protecting the movement of speech. So we work with them. All content producers are important to us, and we like to serve them with helping them with secure websites and payment platforms, and perhaps offsite storage, integration with IPFS, interplanetary file systems, and pirate box systems to make it fully 100% not censorable. These are the stuff that all these things, that's what Content Safe does.
Well, it's funny because if you're a podcaster, the audio is basically you upload it in one spot, and it most of the podcast host websites, I use Podomatic, the audio host websites, like they basically do what you guys do, but there has never been a service for video. So like a lot of us podcasters are like, dude, they do it for audio. You know, I upload it to one place. It's so easy. I upload my my description, my thumbnail, all that stuff to one place, and then it's available on Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, all the places. And the video I have to individually, upload, which is a pain in the ass because it takes longer, and each one is different, which you guys have to deal with all the time. How one place requires this, another place requires that, and we're talking about Rockfin before we start recording. One thing they did improve, which I don't know why it took so long to do it, but they added longer descriptions, because for the longest time you're so limited on what
300 bytes at the beginning, 300 characters didn't make any sense at all. And what's funny is I have clients that are still chafing at 5,000 characters, which is the new length. They say only 5,000.
Well, I mean, I guess if you have a lot of sponsors and information you want to put in there, it is nice to have that extra. I mean, I'm assuming, is it because of just storage? I mean, how it can't be
Nah, I think this was just a decision based on, somebody who doesn't understand content creators.
Yeah. So it's Twitter when there was limited, Twitter limited.
I think they make great technological choices. They use or at least they did in the past. They used a service called mux.com to do all of the streaming and conversions automatically. It's a really nice, well done website. That said, yeah, there are a few things that I think maybe they should have consulted content creators more. But if you think about it, it was done for sports originally, right? 300 characters probably is more than enough for sports.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah, and they're definitely shoulders above BitChute and some of the other ones. But
well, in fairness to BitChute, they are like the top alt media platform right now. Yeah. I think that they suffer from funding issues. That's what I think. Just an opinion. Don't know anybody inside.
It's funny because you said that they get a lot of the alternative media viewership, and it didn't, like, for some reason it's just not something I've thought about. But once you said that, it kind of, like we talked about before, it kind of makes sense because it was one of the early ones. It was one of the first ones. BitChute's kind of an easy name to remember. It's catchy. You go on there. You were looking for stuff that was content that was censored on other platforms. You could find it, and it didn't seem to be censoring anybody whatsoever. So I think people felt comfortable uploading there if you had some controversial stuff or some stuff that was being censored somewhere else. And so it really was one of the first ones. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem like they've updated it too much, but
not a lot.
But now, the thing is too, is like all these platforms, people have like weird things that they enjoy, from one platform to another. There's just going to be some people who prefer Odyssey, some people prefer Rumble. There's going to be, whatever. But I think in time, hopefully there will be one platform, or maybe, I don't know. What's your guys' opinion? Do you think it's?
Oh, I hope not.
You hope?
I hope not. I hope that these things proliferate. And I actually, even though our bread and butter is distributing to these platforms, what we advocate is that the community take over the network. One example of this is interplanetary file system. We need a technology or technologies that allows us to control the network, that no corporation, no government controls it. period. That's what's needed, because clearly we can't trust the government to protect speech. Really? No, you can't. The bureaucrats don't want it, and the politicians don't want it. Trust a corporation? Oh, I remember how this went. Oh, what was it? 6 years ago, I was listening to a podcast out of Texas, and one of the callers came in and was telling the host, YouTube's going to censor all of us. There's no hope. There's no way we can get our message out. And the host says, no, that's ridiculous. That's against YouTube's business model. They'd never do anything like that.
Yeah, it's not going to work that way. I think that anything that becomes really big, like YouTube, Google, Facebook, Twitter, they just become another tool of authoritarianism. And that's the way it's going to work. It's always going to be that way. So it's going to, the market provides. That's the wonderful thing about that. If you, it's like, trying to squeeze water. You're gonna squeeze the content creators out onto all the other distributed platforms. They will keep trying to do this. I mean, the only thing that would stop this would be as if the ruling class gave up and said, sorry guys, we're not authoritarian anymore, we're actually on the side of good now, we had a change of heart. Like, I'm not gonna hold my breath for that.
Or they just go up to their, what was that, that breakaway civilization up on the moon, and they say, you guys can have the earth, we want the moon. Yeah.
Yeah, the breakaway civilization. I don't know, Ricky. I think that the way it seems to be playing out is that you'll have a platform that grows and grows, like we're seeing Rumble, and then they get attacked, and there'll be attempts to, obviously people to infiltrate it. I'm sure there's people on the inside for all of these that are there to ready to sabotage in one way or another. And as content producers, that's all of us right now, then we have an obligation then, or an opportunity, to just like target everywhere and use a shotgun method and oh, look, here's brand new tube, and look, here's iconic, let's see what can happen over there. And to attempt to make them secure and bulletproof will happen, but there's always going to be a security issue for anything that gets big.
Yeah, and that's what I love about your service, is that when I knew, I could see the light at the end of the tunnel with YouTube kicking me off, I'm like, okay, where am I going to go? And you made it, and I knew I had limited time and resources. I'm like, okay, I have to pick maybe one or two other alternative platforms where I can upload, but I'm like, I can't upload to all of them. And then you guys came around. I'm like, wait, apparently I can upload to all of them. And so you made it easy, because this way I didn't have to pick and choose just, one or two. I could do a bunch of them. And like you said, Darrell, like it's one of those things where you don't know which one's going to blow up, which one's going to be the next big thing. Plus, each one has their own niche audience, like Matt was talking about BitChute. There's still a lot of people who started using BitChute a long time ago and still use it. So getting a little bit of exposure everywhere is great, and that's why some people still want to use YouTube. There's people who are like, you know what, I'll put some censored or some stuff that's not going to get censored on YouTube, or I'll put some clips, or I'll do something like that because there's an audience there that I want to reach. So that's the thing. Like when you're on all these platforms, you can reach all these audiences, and you never know where, your audience is coming from. Most of my audience listen to the audio, but I'm sure many of them got exposed to the show on one of these video platforms. So, and
Yep.
where, but to me, it doesn't matter. It's like, as long as they're listening. So it's awesome. And IPFS, obviously Ernie's been talking about it forever. Ernie Hancock, he's the first person who mentioned it to me years ago. But for people listening who don't know what it is, like how does it work? And why do you think, why is people like Ernie so high on that being the future of alternative media?
Well, in a nutshell, without going into any technical details, it allows the content creator to control the distribution of his content. In other words, if you were set up on IPFS, you would have either a computer or a box in your house, and instead of uploading to YouTube, you would upload to that box. And then that box would then talk to the other people who have the same software and it would share that video with those people. All you need is an ISP at that point to provide this network for you to spread your video on. Now we're partnering with another guy that's connected to Ernie. His name's Thomas Freeman. Thomas is the guy that's in charge of a Pirate Box project, and he's building a variety of hardware devices that can be used by content creators and content consumers to be able to distribute their content and view content. And in that way, we remove one more middleman from this picture. Now, how does Content Safe work with that? Basically, Thomas and I have agreed that that's his area. We dabble in IPFS technology. I've actually written a recent article on it for some crypto anarchists. But he's the one that would be providing this to people. And what we provide is a system whereby if you're uploading to IPFS, we can then redistribute to the traditional platforms because they're going to still exist and they're great advertising. What IPFS serves is to secure the content so that it is difficult to take it down, if not impossible.
Right. And like offsite storage is always a way people think like, well, at least it's safe there. That's nice, you know, in the cloud, which equals someone else's computer. Or even if you were to have Content Safe store your stuff offsite, that's still someone else's computer. But IPFS is a blockchain. That's interplanetary file system.
Well, no, it's technically not a blockchain technology.
Okay, not a blockchain.
Let me step in there. Let me be the geek for a minute.
It's
Filecoin. Like no, not even really. There's no consensus in IPFS. The whole thing about blockchains is consensus and getting agreement between parties. In IPFS, what you have is the sharing of file pieces to speed up the aggregate distribution of those files. So if 5 of us have the same file, a person wanting to view that video doesn't request it from one of us. He requests it from all 5 of us. And each one of us contributes a little bit of that file so that that person can watch the video. If you have 5,000 people with that file, now 5,000 people can do it. This had its origin in BitTorrent. IPFS is a sexy, super complicated version of BitTorrent. Okay, Filecoin is a blockchain, by the way. And yes. Filecoin is the same people who did IPFS.
Okay, so that would be the crypto that is connected to IPFS.
Well, kind of, sort of. You can use IPFS. You can use IPFS without using Filecoin. So I advocate IPFS. I don't really advocate Filecoin from a philosophical standpoint because I don't believe that you should mix crypto with other technologies. Just my opinion.
Yeah, there's some food for thought.
Yeah, if Darrell and I were the only ones having this conversation and Matt listened to the show, he'd be rip shit because we would just constantly be saying stuff. And he's like, I wish I was there to correct these guys.
I know. I try to stick to my lane, which is to say, oh, I know what we do. I know how we serve content producers.
And you were correct.
Yeah. And as soon as I go into someone asked me a technical question, I'm like, I have someone to connect you with. And,
right. It's like me asking me a marketing question. I was like, you'll talk to Darrell.
Yeah.
He's the marketer. I'm just the technical guy.
But you know what? That's how you that's how you make a great team. I mean, if you both had the same strengths, you couldn't it wouldn't be a great team. You need to have.
It's like whenever I was a kid, everyone used to tell me, "Oh no, whenever you get married, don't you marry someone who works and has the same education in the same field." Like, no, no way. It'd be constant warfare.
Well, I think opposites attract for many reasons, and like you guys are talking about. It's same thing with just putting together a business or even a sports team, a basketball team, a soccer team. I mean, like you want somebody who's good at defense, you want somebody who's good at offense, you want somebody, if you have a coaching team, you want a coach that maybe gives a tough love, a coach that maybe massages the more emotional, more sensitive players. You want those people who complement each other. Too much of a good thing isn't a good thing. So it's that's definitely important. And you're definitely a black belt in tech, and maybe Darrell's a brown belt. But sometimes he's like, hey, you need to talk to the black belt. He's the one who's gonna clear this up. But how did you guys, because this is I've heard some of Matt's
Good question.
backstory quite a bit. How did you guys? Well, Darrell, what's some of your backstory? What's your origin story? How did you get into this business? How did you get into tech content? What was the origins? I'm assuming your story will also tell some of the origin story of Content Safe and how you guys came about and all that stuff.
Yeah, well, it started with this really cool little community called tragedyandhope.com, where Richard Grove put up a Ning community back when NING Ning was a thing, and that's how me and Matt met. And luckily, I was at that point. It was 2015. I was already on the School Sucks podcast a bunch of times. I was promoting some of my side work, bringing together the trivia method of critical thinking with emotional balancing skills, specifically nonviolent communication. And I saw it as the answer of like mind and heart, and I was heavily promoting that. I wrote up a pretty intricate glossary of terms for all of that type of mental emotional hardware, like methodology. Like Matt, immediately like commented on like that and was using it at home. I guess that'll be his story, but that's how we connected immediately. And I started finding out, hey, what's anomalous design? What's your tech business about? And I began to consult with that, trying to figure out how can I help save money by making it so you don't have to fire clients, so that it's easier, so there's less friction. So in this last 10 plus years, I've been working heavy on the mental emotional kung fu side of things, of just how is it that people think and feel and deal with their feelings, and how do I make it less expensive? And I worked hard for Matt's company, that's the design company, Anomalous Design. And then we began, just like collaborating on all kinds of things. And as soon as the Alex Jones thing happened, you remember that, where Alex Jones and about 1,000 other people were decimated from YouTube, Facebook, Twitter immediately. And that was huge. So that was our cue to get in gear and like start to really ramp up like Content Safe, because that's my version of it. Matt, you had the idea to make Content Safe as a distribution service for sure, though. Right.
Yeah. It was because of you and synergizing with you and a few other people early on that the name Content Safe was born. I would never have thought of that. That's not my thing. I whenever someone just asked me then to describe it, I was like, well, we redistribute content. Not much of a marketer. Darrell and I really did get to know one another because of nonviolent communication. Rosenberg's, right? Rosenberg? Yeah.
Yep, Marshall Rosenberg. Yeah.
Yeah, and I know that back then I was going through a lot of emotional turmoil because we had a business relationship that went very bad. A business partner stole a team that I had trained for a decade. And it was very trying on my sanity at that time. And Darrell was one of the people, Darrell among others, that helped me through that. And one of the things that I would do is print out Darrell's material and Rosenberg's material on nonviolent communication. And we would go out to a park on a Saturday, and my kids and I would read through it together. Now, they were that was several years ago. They were still teenagers at the time, maybe even preteen. But yeah, that's how I got to know Darrell. And the whole Content Safe thing was actually what, maybe our third or fourth attempt to do a business together.
Yeah, this is the fail forward kind of way of making businesses happen. There's been several ideas of trying this and trying that, and even touching into potential Upwork opportunities. That's like a freelancing site, and coming up with other freelancing, like ways of doing that. But we both have this thing in common. We consume alt media a lot,
Yeah.
and and I've been on way more shows as a podcast than I have made podcasts myself. I'm still trying. My show is not medical advice, and that's where I get to say the things that I can't say in front of my medical clients because it's not appropriate and it's not part of the job. But I get to be out there, like I get to like find out about all these cool shows. And now it's even better because now I get to go on shows and promote Content Safe and just have a fun discussion. And I gotta say, I mean, like these people like you, Ricky, who make successful collaborations like Union of the Unwanted, you guys are like my heroes because you have like these big name voices that go up on like Rogan and other shows and that are really out there. And like, like I'm really rooting for the day where you can just finally have like folks like, Robert Malone and Peter McCullough, and then have like, Tom Cowan and Andrew Kaufman there, at the same time to sort of, here's a different version of what also could be happening. And
I actually
to see the
think that
sparks
happened
flying.
with Jessica Rose, right? Jessica Rose and Cowan, right?
They were on my show. Yeah, I had Jessica and I have gotten pretty close. We're really friendly and we just really hit it off. And I just love the way she thinks and how open-minded she is. So I was
very engaging person.
yeah,
Very.
she's awesome. There's a charm to her that people really really like. And well, some people really like. Some people are like, her laugh drives me crazy, and other people are like, I love her laugh. So it's fun. I'm like that. There's going to be a opinionated people out there regardless. But yeah, I was thinking of having Dr. Tom Cowan on because I had him on years ago, and when I had him on, he was kind of lesser known, and during the whole COVID thing, he picked up a lot of steam. And so then I'm like, oh, you know what? Let me reconnect with him, have him back on. And then I'm like, you know what? Let me see what Jessica thinks of him because she's very open minded. And so I'm like, hey, here, this is a past guest. I sent her his first appearance on the show. I also sent some other interviews he's done, and I'm like, hey, would you want to co-host with me? Because Dr. Tom Cowan's really smart, and sometimes I don't know if he's full of shit or not. I don't think he is, but having you there. With your expertise, I'm like, you might be able to pick up on something and ask the appropriate question that I might miss. And so I had her on, and it was an awesome discussion. And she didn't push. I don't know if she didn't push back because she's really nice, or maybe she didn't push back because a lot of the stuff he says just makes sense. One thing, Jessica, and this is one of the reasons why I thought Jessica would be open to this idea, because we would have a lot of long discussions, and sometimes we would talk about how she's studied viruses, the immune system, all these things. But this is like when you go to a university, like your worldview, your beliefs are all based on some previous worldview and beliefs, right? So it's like, okay, everything that you've learned have like this foundation, these principles. So you can be open-minded, but you're restricted because everything, it's like, here's the roots of the tree, here's the trunk of the tree, and you can only expand upwards. You can't go look at other trees. You can only, your views and opinions can only expand from this tree. And so
I
I
have an anecdote about that. And I studied in the sciences. I mean, hardcore physics. That was my undergraduate, and I even did part of a graduate degree in physics.
Wow.
And as I often say, I finished with a master's in computer science because computer science is a breeze compared to physics. And whenever I was my freshman year, I was an uber geek. I mean, seriously, an uber geek. Even my department heads and all that would still call me an uber geek. I was a geek among geeks. And I would go, at the time, no internet, guys, no internet. just right before the internet, because I entered college in 88. I graduated in 95, 96. And I got to experience all that stuff. I would go down to the science library and I would read old journals. That's how much of a geek I was. One day I was in our lab because we had a student run laboratory, and one of the senior students asked me what I was doing. And I said, well, I'm reading these old journals. He said, don't waste your time on those old journals. Just read your textbook. Just read. You're wasting your time. And I was young. I was innocent. I was impressionable. I was like, oh, I didn't realize. Okay, I'll just study my textbook. Well, that's tells you how people think. Actually, looking back at it now, that's stupid. You should be reading those journals because you're seeing differing opinions, differing information on a topic. You're understanding it at a deeper level. Textbooks, just to geek out for a second, if you read a work by Thomas Kuhn, The Scientific Revolutions, he points out in there how textbooks play a part in fossilizing science and preventing its progress.
You're speaking of like the Overton window of allowable questions, and so this is a perspective thing. It's this shifting of paradigms that happens, and that's why when you're looking at older periodicals and older material, they had different allowable questions back then. So,
right.
For example, in like 1918, with the whole Spanish flu, in big quotes over here, that event, the germ theory of disease was new at that point, relatively speaking. Pasteur wasn't that far away from that 1918 period of time. Okay. And not to mention Robert Koch of the Robert Koch Institute of, all the people who are the big promoters of the germ theory of disease, that bacteria and eventually viruses, when they got scanning electron microscopes, were the major causes of disease that come in from the outside. They were just studying it. So then that's when they did these experiments back in 1918, where they were trying to have people cough and spit and like literally like, share like a lot of space with each other to see if one person who's sick can get a healthy person sick. And they found out that didn't happen, or it almost extremely just wouldn't happen, period, that there were other things at play. And they stopped making that experiment happen. They shut it down because it was not showing the results that they wanted to, but they certainly promoted the idea. And that's now not in the Overton window. You're not allowed to ask the question, is the germ theory of disease correct? In a lot of these places, if you want to keep your funding, if you want to keep like your advertising, if you want to get published in various places. So folks like, Andrew Kaufman, Tom Cowan, Sam Bailey, and a growing list of others, Stefan Lanka, they are persona non grata in a lot of those places because they're going to ask the questions and show the evidence that people don't want to see, that for people who want to believe the same thing. Just look at your textbooks. And if you have like for all of us, like I went through medical college too. I had to study all these things, as ridiculous as it was. That's why I have a license of acupuncture. It's medical college, by the way. I had to do like pharmacology and anatomy and physiology and biochemistry and all these ridiculous things. Ridiculous meaning like that they didn't connect it to my actual getting results for clients very well. Okay. They didn't really connect the dots like that. It was mostly like imagine if you had to study the evolution of the T-square as part of your becoming a contractor carpenter, Ricky. It's ridiculous if you had to do that, So the point is, it's a lot of indoctrination for medical professionals. And there's a lot of indoctrination for any professional who goes higher up in the level. There's a book on the subject called Disciplined Minds by Jeff Schmidt. And he goes into the soul crushing qualities that happen with people who go into these high salaried degrees, like that they literally create obedience and conformity and a type of philosophical apathy. People who are just not really ready to ask the questions about, is this really applicable? Is there anything that like shows that this is faulty? anyone who goes into the high level sciences, Matt, you certainly saw like questions, right, where the standard line that you were given, you discovered on your own in dissident science research was not true.
It's interesting you bring this up, because a lot of the things I was taught in physics, I now question.
Right.
I began that questioning process not in physics, but in a different discipline, which was philosophy. And now I'm learning through people who persisted in pushing back on narratives that things like the Big Bang, there's no evidence for it. All of the things that were presented as evidence actually turn out to not be correct. There was always a small voice in the community pushing back on the evidence. And this is one thing that disturbed me during COVID, because I saw people who purportedly knew what they were talking about, but from what I could tell, they were missing the big picture. So I'm not going to name names, because some of these people might be my clients. But there was one person in particular who has a very good reputation as a scientist. And early on, he said the following. I heard it. I know what I heard. He said, "Why would anyone not properly test a vaccine?" He said that doesn't make any sense. He said, "But I have confidence that this vaccine will be properly tested." And like, I came from a science background too, and of course, in my arrogant opinion, a much more difficult discipline than the one he was from. I think the one he's from is more storytelling than actual science. But again, I won't go down that road. Now he's one of the people speaking out the most in the academic community about how the recklessness of the vaccine program. I'm like, dude, you should have been thinking that from the very start. That's what science is about. You should have been doubting everything, questioning everything. For me, I used to rely on peer-reviewed journals. I don't rely on peer-reviewed journals anymore. I automatically distrust everything. Maybe they could have kept deceiving me had they just created a more believable narrative out of this. But no, I'm sorry. I may have taken this far afield here, but I'm very passionate about that. I feel that, one, my innocence was taken advantage of throughout my education. My trust was betrayed.
Well, one thing, what you're saying that I think is so important is the fact that all these theories that are now just kind of agreed upon, that this is now what we accept as reality, they all had pushback. They all had people who disagreed. They all, and you never hear about those stories. You never hear about the people who disagreed with, germ theory or this theory or that theory or whatever. Like you never hear that. They just pick a theory and then they're like, no, all the other ones we're going to call pseudoscience. This is the one that we decide is true. And that's the thing about science. I think if there's some good that came out of 2020 and the whole COVID thing, and I've said this on the show before, it is the fact that people who were in this, what we would call scientism, right? This scientism ideology where it's like, science has become the new religion, where you think that there's this all-knowing people who have it all figured out, and they know truth with a capital T and everybody else is wrong. People are now questioning that. People are now looking at what we call experts, and they're seeing that like, oh wow, experts also have agendas and are motivated not just by truth, but could be sometimes motivated by money or ego or whatever it may be. And they're becoming much more skeptical, because for a long time, I mean, you looked at anybody who believed in anything supernatural or went against the grain as like crazy people or just people who didn't believe in science. And now people are realizing like, no, it's all a part of science. Science debunks itself all the time. And there, science is trying to understand things we don't understand. So, dismissing something that we don't understand as like, oh, that's not science or whatever. It's like, no, like
settled science.
exactly.
Settled
Yeah.
science.
And the science should never be settled. Like the fact
That's right.
it's the most unscientific thing that I keep hearing is, oh, the science settled. I'm like, science is never settled. Like, it's not a permanent state. It is a temporary conclusion. It's not a permanent conclusion. This idea that like, oh, this is what we believe and this is what we're going to believe forever. It's absolutely insane. I remember years ago, she was one of real early, like a couple of years in doing my podcast, Cara Santa Maria from or is it Cara Santa Maria? I don't know. But she was the Talk Nerdy podcast, and she used to be on TYT back in the day. And really smart girl, like fun to listen to, intelligent, thought provoking. But she was raised in a very religious family, and I think it made her want to push back and rebel against anything that was supernatural or unexplained. And she thought science had it all figured out. And I remember telling her on the show, and she dated Bill Maher back in the day too. Interesting little tidbit. But I remember asking her, I'm like, hey, do you think in like 100 years from now, or maybe 200 years from now, or at some point in the future, we're going to look back at the way we look at the world, and they're going to look back and say, wow, they were dumb, primitive idiots because they had it like their understanding of the world was all wrong, and it's the same way we look back at people who say, oh, there must be some, thunder god or something that causes the thunder, or, whatever, some people trying to understand the world and didn't really grasp many things. Like, and she's just like, no, she's like, no, I don't think there's going to be some great, revolution in thought or some great discovery that's going to change our worldview drastically. She's like, I think we've done a great job of understanding the world and blah. I'm just like, what do you? I'm like, how? I don't know if it's being naive or if it's ego or maybe just brainwashed by the religion of science, where you just
it is. It's called scientism. It is brainwashing, and it's funny going back to what I was saying about the Big Bang. One of the problems with the Big Bang is that there are certain things which are considered to be basically already established laws, like Kirchhoff's rule, I think was the one, that it's the basis of everything in cosmology. Everything in cosmology is based on it, and it's wrong.
But
it's absolutely wrong.
Was that there?
It's been. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say I want to let you. Oh, we lost Darrell.
My passion knocked him offline.
Yeah, I was saying that the foundation. That's the thing that is so important. Like this idea that like you're somewhat restricted in your worldview or your thought exploration because you have these principles, and everybody agrees that like, okay, everything is based on these principles. But it's like, so now it's like you can only expand on the anything that comes from those principles. Nobody ever goes back and questions those principles. And
right.
I've learned this even with history. I've had this guy Manuel Rosa, who wrote a book on Columbus, who's very fascinating on the history of Columbus. And it's just, and same thing when I remember years ago when I had Gerard Williams on, who wrote the book Grey Wolf: The Escape of Adolf Hitler. It was the same thing where like, I remember telling people, this was years ago, 2000 whatever, where I'm like, oh, there's researchers out there who think that Hitler made it to Argentina, and they're like looking at me like, no, like they don't, no, I've never heard that. That's insane, right? And then I have somebody on like Gerard Williams, who's he worked for BBC, he a journalist, went all around the world, ends up in Argentina, on another story and runs into all these books and researchers that talk openly about how Hitler was down there. And he's like, wait, what? And then he does a little bit of digging, and come to find out, this story that is told and retold over and over again is based on zero evidence, has, and it just keeps being repeated. And so much of what we know is that. I mean, I forget which scientific story was like that, where somebody was talking about how, I can't remember. I think it was Del Bigtree on one of the High Wire episodes, where he was talking about, like, there's this scientific, or maybe it was, I don't know. I'm like you guys. I consume way too much alternative media. I don't know where I got.
Yeah.
But it's somebody was talking about how, like, there's this theory that or this study that people keep referring to. They're like, oh, the study and the study, and they use it in their their argument. And he's like, you go back and research the study, and it's like one of the worst done studies ever. And it's like, people use it as evidence to in their arguments, and it's like, it's horribly done. People didn't take it seriously, and this guy wasn't a credible guy, and yet people keep referring to the whatever study, and it's like,
Yeah.
That's what happens. We just repeat stuff. Nobody does their own research. Nobody does their own thinking, and
Right.
just kind of regurgitate something. That's why I'm really, your guys' service is really important, because one day, people are going to go back, like my kids, for example, my son's 7, my daughter's 6, and they're going to have memories of the COVID era. They're going to remember, and they're going to, one day, maybe I'll be gone, and I'll be like, let me do some research and find out, like, what really happened. Because I heard Dad say these things, but then I heard that, my teachers say these things or whatever. And they go do research, and, like, history is whatever big tech says it is, because they research, like, oh, did the vaccine save us from COVID? Yes, every headline said yes. Daddy must be crazy, because he's saying otherwise. So it's like, that's why services like yours is so important, so people can find these alternative perspectives. Because if not, then the big tech and media can decide what history is.
I may have shared this in another interview with you, Ricky, but what you're describing is me. My dad was a subscriber to anti-establishment newspapers in the 1980s. I thought, even though I loved my dad and I respected him, I thought he was crazy. Some of the stuff he would tell me out of these newspapers is like, the Rothschilds control the world. Like, Dad, bankers can't control the world. It's too big. Yeah. But you realize that planted a seed in my mind, and I was always looking back, was Dad really crazy about that, or was there something to it?
Yeah, those seeds get planted in dissidents. Like, I'm gonna pretend the story I make up about the three of us is that we all like to question things. That, like, what is the difference between folks who have a passion for discovering accuracy in reality and those who just want to verify the story in their head? And that is a psychological question. It's about, where do you, where is your group think? Where do you get your comfort and cushion from with people? So if you're around people that all conclude the same way, if you're going to step outside of that line unconsciously, it's like you're going to you could get pushed out of the tribe, and you'll be out in the cold to fend off, like, the big beasts that are out there. And this is part of what Matthias Desmet, like, very much, like, described in his theory of mass formation, where, like, under certain stresses, all of the people who now are, like, having less actual meaning and purpose in their life, because they're already dissatisfied with their job for perhaps decades or maybe their whole life, and now they are isolated, so they have less connection with people. There's less like diversity in opinion and thought, and they have free floating anxiety, because you can't really, like, look at a virus in the same way as when you're looking at invaders or, like, actual, like, vermin or saber-toothed tigers that you have to take on. Like, you can't really focus on a virus that is not findable, and literally for many good reasons. And then you have the actual unfocused rage and regression that goes against the other group. And in this case, it's about someone who believes something differently, or is concluding differently, or is open-minded. So you get to see this psychological component in people who moved from one form of religion to another, like Matt just described. Scientism is another religion. If you just really need to preserve the same story, the same narrative, I go like this: there's my narrative in my head. I know I really believe it. This guy's an a-hole. She's all uptight. You know, she'll never change. That kind of thing. If you preserve that, like, and that same thing, like that obviously the narratives about viruses or germ theory, if you need to be right about something, then, you know, like Upton Sinclair, you know, it's very difficult to explain something to someone if their salary depends upon them not understanding it. And their salary is an emotional, mental salary. If you can't go outside of that box, if you can't suddenly question, you know, maybe Trump derangement syndrome is just ridiculous and a waste of energy and time. And if you can't go outside of the box, like maybe, you know, trusting in this completely new technology vaccine and all of the big governments and trusting in the biggest corporations ever across the world and celebrities who are well paid is a bad idea. You know,
Yeah.
it's hard to do that if it's gonna be making you on the out with people. So I try to find, I don't know if you did this too, Ricky, but like, how do I make a bridge of empathy to people who really need to be that certainty, right? Because there's people I don't want to kick out of my life because they've been there for a long time. And it's also on brand with me. Like, I don't like to kick people out for like simple reasons, like academic reasons, like we conclude differently scientifically, and they're not even a scientist of any kind, you know, but they're in my life for some reason. So I try to find, like, what's the connection point? Why do I even have them in my life in the first place? Where are the friction areas? And usually those are these topics where it goes against their religion, because they wouldn't, you know, like it's in the same kind of thing. Like if we were 500 years ago, you know, they wouldn't want to say that believing in, you know, that version of Catholicism is a religion. It's like breathing. It's like life. It's like you go to church. It's like that's what life was, you know, for them. And for scientism people, that's what life is. It's like I just watch what's on PBS and I listen to, you know, I listen to NPR and I'm taking in these talking points, and that's what life is. And like it's problem solved so much easier. And they don't have to get a new wife or new husband, and they don't have to like explain hard things to their children about how they got it wrong. They can just move on, you know. And like, how do you find the way to maintain connection with people who are of different belief, Ricky? How do you do it?
Well, I mean, chances are something you said is important is like, okay, why are they in my life? Right. And it's like, oh, are they in my life because we agree on these specific things? Probably not. You know, if we're talking about people I disagree with on these important issues, if they're in my life because we get along when we talk about music, or we, you know, we play sports together, or you know, we train together, we work out together, or we go to the same gym, or whatever it may be. Like there's other ways of connecting with people. You know, I think you can connect with people over other stuff, you know, and maybe you enjoy having some whiskey and a cigar together, and which sometimes will lead down to these conversations that you end up having these type of disagreements. So it's, you know, to me, as you get older, it is important to filter out anybody that you constantly have conflict with. I think it becomes, it gets to a point where it's too energy draining. And when you're young, you have endless amounts of energy. So and much more time. So I think you're much more likely to maybe keep somebody who, I mean, for lack of a better term, like maybe a leech, somebody who's mooching off your positive energy. You know, they're always bringing the negative energy, and you're, you know, and we all have those friends, those people you get together and it's like, damn, he's always bitching about shit, you know, or he's always in a shitty mood. And then you have the friends, right, that are always in a good mood, who don't cause conflict and don't like conflict, and the ones that you are always busting balls with and joking, and or like we're naturally more attracted to those people. You know, if you look at your friends, the type of friends that get along with everybody and everybody enjoys being with, they're the positive people, right? And so it's important also to make sure we don't, you know, we're constantly being you know, causing a ripple effect of positive energy, and this idea of you know, hopefully improving people's moods and worldviews and that type of stuff. when we interact with them, and not be somebody who's negative. I mean, I have disagreements with people all the time. You know, during even the COVID lockdown, I was at the gym quite often because there wasn't much else to do, and I go already for just about every day. And then during the COVID lockdown, there wasn't much to do, so you're spending a lot more time there, and you're spending a lot of time talking because a lot of people needed social interaction. They weren't getting it, so they were finding it at a gym atmosphere. But it also meant that you would end up talking about a lot of stuff that people disagreed about. And, you know, to me, I always went away from those conversations feeling better if I felt like I could some way, even if we disagreed on some stuff, find some things that we agreed with to talk about or end the conversation with. And you know, and I sometimes I felt like I was that comedian who like lost the room, you know, like they turned on him, and then I remember, I don't know if it was which comedian it was, where he was kind of rude to somebody that was getting kicked out, and then the audience kind of turned on him a little bit, and he's like, don't worry, I'll win you guys back. And he like worked the audience long enough where eventually we came
Probably
back.
Chappelle.
Maybe. And so you know, that's kind of sometimes how I feel. I'm dealing with like a interaction with somebody I disagree with. It's like, okay, like we disagree on this stuff, and I don't want to ignore like this issue, this disagreement, because sometimes it's really easy. You get those chameleons that kind of like either they don't have strong opinions, so it's really easy just to be around anybody and just agree with whatever anybody might be saying, or you get the people who kind of like, okay, I don't like conflict, so even though I disagree with this person, I'm going to keep to myself. Well, I don't like conflict, but I also don't like propaganda or bad information circulating, because if I don't speak up and say something, then that person's going to think that it's going to be more reason to believe that they're right, you know, and more reason to believe that.
Well, we just have not developed a speculative culture. My family was quite religious, and I was involved quite a bit in my youth with studies. That's why, you know, a lot of people wonder why I know so much about a lot of different things. It's because I've had a lot of different backgrounds. And one thing I noted from the late 1800s Christian communities was that they were much more open to questioning one another than they are now. There was a lot more. You could have a Baptist and a Presbyterian going at one another in a debate, but they would have dinner together and they would talk about their differences. They'd still disagree with one another, but there was always active engagement and disagreement. Well,
what era was that? When, I mean, what years do you
that
think
would have been like
happening?
1870s, 1860s, 1870s, somewhere around in there.
And there's
and
a
you see it
theory
in the writings.
I know. I think there's a theory, though. I've talked about it with you extensively, Matt, about Pendulum. That's by Roy Williams and other author named Drew. It's about that every 80 years, there's this cycle where things become very intolerant and authoritarian. And this is an example right now. And the peak of it back then was 1943, where you had people rounding up other people, both on the mainland US, you know, if you happen to be of Japanese descent. And then of course, obviously, like they spread the rumor that Jews were spreading disease, and they were rounding up all kinds of people besides that, like, you know, the Roma, gypsies, etc. And like nowadays, of course, there's like the divide and conquer between those who, you know, took the jab and were fall full into mask wearing and social distancing and just believing in the common narrative, the very widely publicized narrative, and those who like choose to find alternative research methods instead and other places. And there's a divide and conquer between that. And every 80 years you have that, where like before that, there was the Civil War and the Napoleonic Wars. And before that, you have the Revolutionary War, where you have, you know, like in many cases, you have brother against brother and family against, you know, like members against each other. And in between those times is like a 40-year period between, like 40 years ago, 1983, you know, that's like the peak period where you have people like, you know, kind of more individualism, more of the hero worship actually is the worst part of that part, where you have to have like fake phony posing, you know, big shoulder pads and big hair, and like Madonna, the Material Girl, you know. But leading up to that was the 60s and 70s of more and more of the individual, and we can all have it our own way, and we can all let each other be each other like that. And I think that's a pattern that we can all see enacting right now. If I had read Pendulum before World War COVID happened, I would have like understood and seen it like happening. Like, of course this is going to happen, because it happens like clockwork. It's like those authors of Pendulum, they like took it back 3,000 years with evidence in pop, you know, like pop charts, in books, in trends with religion, in trends of warfare. And evidence is substantial that this is just a pattern that just keeps happening. And it may be that the ruling class over this time loves to perpetuate this pattern, you know,
Well,
but whatever the cause of it
maybe
is.
not perpetuate it. If, let's say for a moment they don't control it. Let's just say that it's a natural cycle. They
Sure, why not?
piggyback it. They piggyback the cycle and they take advantage of it. I mean, that would make a whole lot of sense. If you are observing it, you know what's happening. Well, here's our opportunity. We know the stocks are going to be low. It's time to buy.
Yeah.
Guys, I have another meeting I got to jump off to. So
Okay.
I hope you guys can continue together, because I think you two need time to talk.
Yeah, we'll wrap it up together. There's definitely some more things we can expand on. Thanks, Matt.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Matt.
Yeah, that's that. Have you ever looked into Michael Millerman, the philosopher? Oh,
Not yet.
oh, super fascinating. You got I got I'm trying to think how I learned. Well, Dugan, you know, Alexander Dugan, they call. Oh, really? Okay, he's been in he's been in the news not too long ago, because unfortunately his a lot of people think that some operation, possibly U.S. Involvement in a operation to basically assassinate him, and accidentally assassinated his, or maybe intentionally, we don't know, but assassinated his daughter, who's a journalist.
Oh.
And there was a crazy video of like him outside the car, like they were all driving together in different cars, and the car's on fire, and he just has his hand on his head, and he's just. But the reason why this is this happened is because they call him, the nickname is Putin's brain. They say that he's a huge influence on Putin and his ideologies, his philosophies, and all this stuff. Super fascinating guy. But I got exposed to him through Michael Millerman, and Michael Millerman is a super interesting philosopher. One of my favorite people to listen to. I mean, I can hear he's actually recently, we're talking about Viva. He was on Viva. He was on my show, and I think prior to my show, he wasn't on a lot of big shows. Like he was on Thaddeus Russell's Unregistered podcast, which I'm sure you know Thad, because he was on
Yes.
Brett.
School sucks.
Yeah, the school. It's a long time ago. Yeah, and I've had that on a long time ago too, and I think I actually got exposed to Thaddeus Russell from the School Sucks podcast. And but yeah, so he was on there, but very fascinating guy, and like just such an interesting thinker. But one thing I love about philosophers and philosophy in general is that like there's nothing like off limits in regards to questioning things. Like you can just it's literally a exercise of questioning things. Like there's never it's endless questions and never really any real conclusions. You know, it's like, oh, this philosopher sees things this way, this philosopher sees things that way. And then you can even get deeper into like, okay, well, the writing of this philosopher is influenced by the person who's telling you what he meant, you know, and like different translations. And you know, like he's a big oh my god, now I'm having a brain fart who the philosopher is that he's a huge fan of. But Leo Strauss, he's a big fan of Leo Strauss, and he talked about how like a lot of people who grew up professors and people he knew who were big fans of Strauss, like they had different interpretations of Plato or Socrates or you know whatever. And that's something that's fascinating too, right? Because it's all like, okay, this person who's telling me, you know, what they meant, their interpretation of it could be completely different than somebody else. So it's like what they meant is really unknown. And so when you go, and that's what makes it so fascinating. Like that part of it. I know it's funny because I remember there was a podcast with Jordan Peterson that there was a lot of like back and forth. And I remember Rogan talking about how he's like, oh, that debate, he's like, it was just like a lot of nonsense. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm like, no, I enjoyed it. To me, I enjoy like going deep into like what sometimes seems like simple things, but you can really dissect it and then dissect it some more and dissect these things endlessly. And to me, it's fascinating because you can either look at things at like a surface level, or you can realize like there's layers upon layers upon layers of everything, and you can keep dissecting those things, from so many, and so many different philosophers have completely unique different worldviews, and you can explore them all, and you never come to conclusion that like, oh no, he's right or whatever. So it's super fascinating. I'll have to send you a link to Professor Millerman. He was one of the first people to translate Dugin's writing, his books. He has a book called the Fourth Political Theory, and he started translating some of his books. And Millerman's Eastern European, but he was born in Canada, was teaching a professor in Canada, translating his books. Then he ended up getting pushback about translating Dugin's books because people are like, oh no, he's off limits. He's, and he ended up now he's independently. He has a school called the Millerman School, and he's doing it independently, similar to what like Thaddeus was doing with the unregistered. Well, no, it wasn't Renegade University, which I don't know what happened there, but all of a sudden he's like, I'm not connected to them and whatever. And I'm like, okay, something weird happened there where you promote the shit out of it, and all of a sudden you're trying to disconnect from it. But yeah, is that one of your intriguements with philosophy? Well, what are some of your who has inspired your interest in philosophy? Was there books or specific philosophers that really attracted you to the whole field?
Yeah, I think that in general, those who are open-minded inspired me. And I mean, I got into medicine first, and that opened my mind to see how many different ways things were wrong. And I got into medicine because I had medical problems that were not being solved by the standard model. So that was my introduction to it. Imagine if you were out there trying to like, doing construction, and like everything that you did in construction was always like messing up and making more problems for people. And like, which is what medicine kind of has become over, like, thanks to the Flexner report and the Rockefeller influence on medicine, on industrial, like heavily harm causing medicine. So I experienced that harm causing. I had allergies to cats and dogs and dust and who knows what else, and I didn't understand how much of that was caused by me and what I was eating and other chemicals that I was exposed to in general. And that drove me down that line. And my mom was driving me around in back then, listening to interesting shows coming from New York City, because I was growing up outside of New York City. And there was Dr. Gary Null, like it was Natural Living, it speaking like eloquently on the different paradigms and the problems with trusting these medical like models. And I was like 12, 13, 14, 15 years old, getting driven around before I had a car and stuff, and taking these messages in. I think that that's the thing, is that when the answers do not provide the results that I want, I embraced uncertainty. And say, like, someone like Joe Rogan, who is taking in that show and calling it nonsense because the two people were debating these ideas, he wants to be certain. Because for him, probably, and many, many others, the popular guys out there, I'm going to pretend he's like one of the popular guys, they got popular because they just went along with the status quo answer, and it wins you. It gets you the job, it gets you laid, it gets you all of the rewards and perks of the culture around you by just embracing the certainty. And it's only a dissident who steps outside of that field that will go there. And my first, major heroes are these podcasters like Richard Grove and Brett Veinotte, who are like opening things up, and Wes Bertrand, who inspired Brett Veinotte to have a podcast in the first place. He did Complete Liberty, and he also opened my mind to nonviolent communication. I mean, these are lesser known characters, but like from them, I came to, you know, find folks like Jeff Schmidt, who wrote Dissident Minds, like I mentioned before, just uncovering what type of damage happens to people like me who go through profound high level studies. And that damage is, you know, mental and emotional damage. It makes like a rigidity. So yeah, it's been a lot of different people that all come through this layering pattern of being open-minded. I had a medical, you know, teacher. I still have a medical teacher in Vermont who trained me and began my studies. First started me with acupuncture and chiropractic in 1998, and that's yeah, because I'm 50 now, by the way, you know. So
Really?
yeah. I've moved forward in life now. So
Bringing up Gary Knoll, it's funny you bring him up because I
oh,
literally,
you know him?
oh, well,
Know of him?
I
Yeah.
know. Oh, yeah. I mean, anybody who's been in this world, see, one of the first, similar to yourself, like one of the first rabbit holes I went down was in medicine and alternative medicine and natural remedies and all this stuff because uh, I was kind of late into sports and then in my, you know, early teens, I really got into being a gym rat and working out and weights, and I was training all the time, and I was trying to like find every way possible to try to get bigger and stronger and faster and become a better athlete. And you would find supplements and things that work that were getting banned, and I'm like, I don't get it. This is getting banned, but I can go buy cigarettes or I can go buy, you know, like things didn't make a whole lot of sense. And then, you know, I've told this story in the past too, like so being Portuguese, and I was born in Portugal, and my parents don't speak much English, so I would go translate for them when we would go to the doctors. And I remember at a really young age, my father's doctor telling him how like how high his cholesterol was. He's like, he's like, I have this many patients, whatever, hundreds of patients. He's like, your father has the highest cholesterol out of all of them. And I remember him telling us a number. It sounded like a credit score. It was so high. And I'm just like, oh, I'm like, hey, he has great credit, but apparently that's his cholesterol number. But I started getting skeptical because I'm like, I don't get it. Like I would yell at my dad. I'm like, hey, you got to change your diet. This doctor's saying you're gonna have a heart attack. I would get mad at my father. I'm like, listen, you gotta change your lifestyle. I'm like, this dude's saying that you're gonna have a heart attack any day now, you know. And then, you know, months would go by, years would go by. I'd go visit to the same doctor with my father again. He'd give the same spiel, and I would get mad at my father. Like, this guy said he's gonna, and then eventually I'm like, wait, he's been saying this for a long fucking time. And if you know, my father's like active as all hell. He works construction. He you know, he lives very much a kind of like a Portuguese farmer lifestyle still, where he grows stuff. He has animals in the backyard, chickens and sheep and goats and rabbits and all this stuff. So even when he's done with his physical labor at work, he goes home and does more physical labor. He likes to have a glass of wine every night. So he drinks not a lot, but he drinks often. And he still wakes up early every morning and he's active. And I'm like, dude, this guy is healthier than I am. I'm like, I don't know. I'm starting to get skeptical about this cholesterol thing. And it kind of, and then we're getting into weights and stuff, and seeing kind of like the absurdity of like the things that were banned and things that weren't. And like, talking to, I became really close to this, well, now is a friend of mine, Bob, who owned a supplement store called Supplement Zone. And he would talk, he was big in natural remedies. So half of his supplement store was like, here's performance stuff and proteins and creatines and this stuff. And then the other side were all vitamins. And I would be hanging out at his store, and we would, you know, have long conversations, and people would come in and grab a vitamin. I'm like, oh, Bob, what's that for? And he would tell me, and I'm like, damn, man, there's a lot of great stuff here that's good for this or good for that. I'm like, how come it doesn't say on the label that this is, you know? He's like, you can't. And he's the first one to start telling me like that. And I was like, I mean, it boggled my mind. I'm like, you're telling me that you can't put on these vitamins what it can potentially help you with? You have to do the. I'm like, so how the fuck do you know? I'm like, over here the pre-workouts say get huge, all this, there's all this marketing, burn fat. Like they can market the, till the cows come home, even if it's, like just about everything would say like lose weight, burn fat, gain muscle. And I'm like, which is some of it's kind of false advertisement. And the vitamins, God forbid they write anything on there about what it could potentially help or treat. And I'm like, okay, so you start connecting these dots and you're like because that's the interesting thing about being skeptical of things, right? Like sometimes you collect a puzzle piece and you don't know where that puzzle piece goes, but I'm like, I'm going to save this freaking thing. I'm going to put it in my pocket because I have a feeling I'm going to find another piece that connects to this. And you don't know why it's important and you don't know when you're going to find out why it's important. But then you start collecting puzzle pieces and little by little, like the picture becomes clear. And that's how, that was kind of my journey too, was medicine. It was just like, the fact that so many people were on prescription drugs, and then like when you start realizing like they're not curing anything, they're just symptom management. It's like, oh, here's like this is my symptom, here's a pill for it, and then you read the side effects and like, wait, what like I did all these other things could potentially happen. It's like, well, this thing might not be that bad where I even need to treat it in the first place, and and because if I do treat it with this pill, it causes these other issues that eventually need to be treated. And then it's a cocktail of things, and I don't know which pill is causing the issues I have, which could lead to other future issues. So and so many people, Dr. Chris Kresser, which I'm sure you're familiar with, the functional medicine doctor, very similar story, had health issues, then he started going down this rabbit hole. Same thing with like a lot of past guests of mine who started getting skeptical. I had Jim Abrams on, who did some of my favorite movies back in the day, Naked Gun and Airplane. He was the filmmaker who did those movies. His son had these violent seizures and they couldn't figure out what it was. He was a very successful filmmaker, went to all the best doctors. All the best doctors said, here's some pills, here's some pills, here's some pills. Eventually, he ended up running into some research about the ketogenic diet and putting people in ketosis, curing people of seizures. And so he gives it a try, cures his kid of seizures, ends up starting a foundation named after his son called the Charlie Foundation, and was another one of those things where he was going to the experts, and the experts were telling you, these are your only options. These are the only things that have been proven, these prescription drugs, these pills, and anything else that he heard about must be pseudoscience because it's not coming from the expert's mouth. And then come to find out it actually worked. And so now he focuses on dietary solutions to different issues. And everything you eat is either hurting you or helping you. And that's what people have to realize. Like so many of our health issues, lack of energy, fatigue, joint pain is coming from what we're consuming, or like what you said too, and I think sometimes it's even neglected, is environmental things around us, chemicals and the things we're touching or putting on our skin or whatever. So without a doubt.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack in all of that, but for one thing, I mean, you did realize over the years that, hey, they kept giving a bad cholesterol score for your dad. And then eventually you realized, hey, there could be something to this, but there's a whole book on the topic, the cholesterol myth. And maybe like afterwards I could send you the PDF of the book, because just like all books, we've all found ways to get the free PDF for everything. And, I think it's important to understand, like, you can open your mind if you have that ability to have these four main qualities that I think we exhibited, certainly our whole company, Content Safe, exhibits them. That is curiosity. So first, we're curious. We want to discover. We don't think we've already discovered everything. Like when you asked your friend, don't you think they'll like discover some new things that'll show like the barbaric, backwards nature of this culture going on right now in, like, say, however many years from now, just like it did for 500 years ago before that? This is not the pinnacle. And so first you'd need the curiosity, then you'd need the flexibility of mind where you can consider, could it be this option also? So you have all these different guests who are discussing the components. We had, Jessica Rose and Tom Cowan discussing components of health and looking at actual evidence, perhaps, like of what they were starting with. And then they would need humility to acknowledge potential error, right? So there's nothing like practicing medicine. I can tell you, Ricky, that really you get like a dose of humility, because it is just impossible to have anything that's 100% perfect and predictable. Everything's out of control. Like, I don't keep my clients locked up in a laboratory where they're only administered certain things and prevented from being exposed to other things. They're out there doing their life, and then they're coming to me paying money, because I don't do insurance, just to get results. And I have to deliver amidst that maelstrom of all these variables, and I have to counsel them on their diet and their lifestyle and their mind and their heart and how they're dealing with things and their exercise. And some of them will do certain things, and some of them, they just really want me to fix it all. In fact, I've certainly have like someone who showed up expecting me to be a traditional Chinese medical doctor, like the standard acupuncturist. I'm an acupuncturist, right? And I'm not that. I'm a contractor for the body. Like, I'm a lot more like a contractor. Like, I have all these many tools. I started my training as a chiro assistant, doing a special type of chiropractic as well as other things. So when you have like all of these different components, it comes down to responsibility. Like, and that fourth quality I didn't mention, because I was mentioning like curiosity, flexibility, humility. And that last one is called courage. And that's actually like feeling the fear, but moving forward anyway. Feeling like that I could be getting it wrong, or I could be getting it right, but I feel the fear, I'm going to move forward. And it takes courage to talk about what we're talking about. It takes courage to make a pioneering business of video distribution where there's no other competition in alt media video distribution, because no one would be crazy enough to do that right now. Like, Hootsuite will distribute like your posts on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, and like other places like that, like the big media places. But there's no one in there. So when you're a pioneer and you're going out to unknown territory, you go out there and you're coming back with arrows in your back, because that's what being a pioneer takes. It takes courage to go out there. And it takes courage to put stuff out there on a YouTube channel like yours, Ricky, that this is going to like, oh, I don't know how long this YouTube channel will last. Sure enough, you have the certain person on there, and that's all it takes is they're ready to just grab and remove. Personal responsibility is not is a building sexy thing. Like, I think Jordan Peterson has helped like to encourage that, to say, to take personal responsibility. That was his dangerous message, right? To really get out there and do that. I think it's a lot to go there. And I big kudos to all the folks who are promoting holistic healthcare in general, like Chris Kresser. He's another acupuncturist, by the way. I mean, like, I think it's really important to promote the ideas of you can find the answers out there. And then they'll have debate, like where I would debate saying, hey, Chris, many functional medicine doctors, they're not really much different in function and reality than a naturopathic doctor. And there's some problems with that. And here, I'd like to list them out for you, and, would you be open-minded to look at what I'm talking about? And here's an alternative. They're called clinical kinesiologists or applied kinesiologists. They frequently have a doctor of chiropractic, but sometimes they're a weirdo like me who is trained by a doctor of chiropractic, and you could find them out there, and they will test for biocompatibility specific to a person, instead of going based upon a blood test, which is based upon these parameters that they were arbitrarily decided. So they arbitrarily lowered the cholesterol level to make so much money. That's the cholesterol myth in a nutshell. They lowered what is healthy. And by doing so, they promoted lots of people. They got a lot of people to get on anti-cholesterol drugs, cholesterol removing drugs specifically. And what that did over generation now is, when you remove cholesterol, well, guess what the brain is made out of? Cholesterol, largely. And when you remove enough of that, because these don't stop at removing it just from the bloodstream, they remove it from everywhere, including the nervous system. Now you have a huge growing number at the same time when they did the anti-cholesterol drugs as dementia and Alzheimer's. And they're trying to, like pinpoint that one to aluminum toxicity. But I would say that the number one thing that causes this is all those people who are on anti-cholesterol drugs and lowering their cholesterol dietarily, thinking that animal fats would be bad for them. So they're starved of the actual needed fats for thinking, as well as, of course, toxins, which is the number one, other way to do it. So, Yeah, that was a long-winded version just to cover a lot of what you were talking about. But man, I really want to get more people into responsibility. I want to get more people to subscribe with us. I want to grow that business like that. I'm looking forward to making this stuff happen. And just to like plug another thing that I do, I consult medically for people across the mainland. So I'm over here in the Big Island of Hawaii, and I see people here in my clinic, right behind the screen. Screen, by the way, so I get to figure out how can I help you? How can I advise you with your diet, with your lifestyle, or perhaps exercises? How can I advise you with some supplements that you can safely take and how to use them? And then most importantly, I can know how to research and find people like me, people like my teacher, Rick Warman, people who are really amazing at biocompatibility testing in office that will find out, indeed, like if I grab, is this adrenal supplement good enough for you? Or do you have an actual autoimmune overreaction to it, meaning an allergy? I can figure that out in office to some degree. But if you're going to someone where they're just guessing, they don't know. So I send people to people who not just guessing. We all have to do guessing in medicine. We have to do guessing, and you have to do guessing in contracting work too. But we, just like both of us, we also measure. We're measuring things. Okay, we're measuring the results, and this is the stuff that people could think of as woo-woo and disproven science that has like horrible pages if you looked up applied kinesiology on Wikipedia or acupuncture on Wikipedia, by the way. They're trying to like downgrade that kind of thing, while at the same time, insurance companies pay out big time for acupuncture, by the way. And what I'm getting at is basically that there are options out there. And yeah, I'll try to make sure that folks watching the show, if you know me and like me and trust me after listening to all this is where I get people, across the mainland to work for you, to find solutions for chronic illnesses and injuries that just didn't get better, or certainly got worse when you trusted the wrong doctor. There's a question, Ricky, did you ever trust the wrong doctor, or did you take healthcare into your own hands?
I've never trusted any doctors. My kids only saw the pediatrician to check their height and weight from time to time, and that was it. How
about vaccines for them, or?
No, neither of them have ever had a vaccine ever. No, they're neither of them. And the good thing is, like, I try to tell other parents, I'm like, your pediatrician will scare the shit out of you and convince you that if your child doesn't get vaccinated, their life is, on the line. Like it's a life or death decision. And so I openly tell people, I'm like, listen, look at my kids. I'm like, my son and daughter are star athletes. They're amazing soccer players. They play for a local like club team, a premier team. They're both, obviously it's my kids, so we typically brag about our own kids, but no teacher that they've ever had, no adult that's ever seen them play sports or perform mentally or physically will tell you that they're not at least slightly above average, and yet they've never had a vaccine. They don't have any allergies, they don't have any medical issues, they don't have any anything really. I mean, they barely ever get sick. And I'm not saying it was vaccine related, but it's obviously, the proof's in the pudding. Like you look at the kids and you look at many other kids who have tons of autoimmune issues, allergies, whatever it may be. It definitely it at least relieves some parents of this fear that, like, if I don't vaccinate my kid, like all these bad things are going to happen. Like, here's some evidence that of a family, healthy kids who've never been vaccinated, and they're great. And I think it probably does some harm when parents who don't vaccinate their kids kind of keep it to themselves because they don't want to get into the topic or the subject or whatever, because I think having that evidence of like, oh, look at all these healthy kids who aren't vaccinated, like the world's not going to crumble if you suppress vaccinating your kids. It's fear mongering, and pediatricians do a great job of scaring the shit out of new parents who just want to do the right thing. And they're concerned about making the wrong decision. They're concerned about even my wife who was exposed to a lot of this information would go to the pediatrician just to check the height and weight, and she would be just bullied, and where I end up having to go instead of her, taking the day off from work or whatever, because they couldn't bully me the way they could bully her, but they would just make her feel like a bad parent. They'd make her feel like she made the wrong decision, and wouldn't just let it go. And a lot of parents are in that situation. So there's definitely, I can tell that there's a lot of rabbit holes that you and I can definitely go down. And I will also have to have you on a Union of Unwanted. And we from time to time I'll do shows where we'll have a lot of health experts and people on there. You would be a great addition to those conversations with your perspective and stuff. And if there's any links to, you on any social media platforms or if you have a specific website for the medical stuff that you do and the health stuff that you do, then please send them to me, because I'll put them in the show notes in case anybody wants to reach out and whatnot. So so thank you so much for being with me, Darrell. Like this has been a super fascinating and fun discussion. We'll definitely have to do this again where you know that we're actually doing it next time. But and definitely have you on the You Unwanted, especially in one of those health related podcasts. We're talking about this in the beginning about how important this information is. There's so many people out there who are living with pain or fatigue or unhappiness, and it could be at least improved if they just change their lifestyle or what they're eating or whatever, or explore some of these other solutions. So that's why I'm so passionate about these topics, because just like you are, and I can tell you are, because it's not fair that some people aren't living life to their fullest because of bad information that they were fed.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I look forward to getting on those shows. I'll get you my links out, an email for sure. And this has been so awesome. Well, once again, I'm gonna make sure to mention contentsafe.co to mention that, hey, I do work for a video distribution company that gets your stuff out there, that getting this show out there on a bunch of different platforms. And I want to really stick it to censorship. I want to do it.
Well, without a doubt. And some of the topics that you're intrigued with, that's why Content Safe is so important, because a lot of these alternative voices or these alternative information, like if there isn't companies like Content Safe to help get us, give us the ability to get this information out there, people aren't going to find it, because there are people out there who maybe lose faith in modern medicine or, the experts, quote unquote. But if they're searching for this information, it's getting harder and harder and more difficult to find. So thanks to, Content Safe, you're helping people like myself who are bringing these experts on and these alternative perspectives. You're helping us get to those people and get the information to the people who can really use it and need it and are looking for it. And so without a doubt, definitely check out contentsafe.co. And you guys also built my website. You guys do plenty of things in regards to tech. So if there's a service out there and related to if you're a content creator, YouTuber, whatever it may be, a gamer, there's probably something that Content Safe can do for you and help you out with. So, and Matt's a wealth of knowledge in regards to tech stuff. As you know, I'm sure much better than I do. He's a whiz. So definitely reach out. And thanks again for everything you guys do. I mean, it's one thing, I said about Odyssey, and I'll say it about you guys. It's awesome to find out that like a product or a company that you like, the people that are behind that company are people who truly believe in the stuff that we're doing and the information that we're trying to spread. So, gives hopefully people one more reason to support you guys and the work that you're doing.
I am psyched for that. Yeah. Hey, I look forward to next time, Ricky. This has been awesome.
Awesome. Thanks, Darrell. I really appreciate the time, and we'll definitely talk again soon in the near future.
Right on.
Take care.
See ya.